What if the blueprint for theoretical astrophysics wasn't discovered in some 20th century lab, but was actually just hiding in plain sight in a 2,000-year-old scripture? Welcome to the deep dive, everyone.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a pretty wild thought.
Right. Today's deep dive, it looks at a royal throne, a 2,000-kilometer journey, and a trip that essentially took exactly 0 seconds.
Which is a premise that, frankly, it challenges how we categorize human understanding altogether.
Yeah.
But before we jump into the actual mechanics of teleporting thrones, we really should establish our ground rules for you listening.
Oh, absolutely.
We are pulling this from a pretty fascinating breakdown by Dr. Sufyan's Quran Daily Dose. And our goal today is just impartial exploration. I mean, we aren't here to endorse specific religious doctrines or, push any sort of political viewpoint.
Right, we're strictly analyzing the structure of the argument.
Exactly. An argument that connects these ancient textual narratives directly to, well, modern theoretical physics.
Yeah, we are strictly here for the intellectual journey. So, okay, let's unpack this. We are dropping right into a really specific historical and scriptural narrative from Surah An-Naml, verse 38.
Right.
The scene is Prophet Suleiman, or Solomon, and he's presiding over his assembly. And, if you're at all familiar with these texts, this isn't your standard royal court.
No, definitely not.
His dominion includes humans, jinn, and birds.
Yeah, it's a vast and really complex dominion. And within this setting, Suleiman basically poses this seemingly impossible logistical challenge to his court.
Right, he wants a throne.
He does. He wants the throne of the Queen of Sheba brought to him.
Which, let's just quickly frame the geography here just so you understand the stakes of this. Suleiman is positioned up in Palestine. The Queen of Sheba's throne is way down in Yemen.
Right, which is a massive distance.
It's roughly 2,000 kilometers of just unforgiving, rugged terrain. I mean, even today, if you had heavy lift helicopters and massive cargo planes moving this massive, ornate royal throne, that distance, intact, is a huge logistical operation.
For sure.
But back then, it's just unthinkable.
It's a completely astronomical request.
Yeah.
And, the responses he gets are what set up the entire core mystery we're exploring today.
Yeah, so what happens?
Well, first, this really powerful jinn steps forward, specifically an Ifrit. And this Ifrit offers to bring the throne to Suleiman before the assembly even concludes.
Which is incredibly fast, right? I mean, that is just brute force and supernatural speed.
Exactly.
If we think about that in pure physics terms, the jinn is just, he's accelerating conventional travel to this unbelievable degree, just moving through space rapidly.
Precisely, yeah, as linear travel, just very fast. But then the narrative shifts gears entirely. It isn't an angel that steps up next, and it's not some, even more powerful jinn.
Right.
It's just an ordinary human. The texts often identify him as a Sifin Barkia. But honestly, what matters isn't really his name. It's the singular trait that defines him in the verse.
Which is that he possessed, quote, knowledge of the book.
Right, exactly. And this ordinary human, armed with this knowledge, guarantees he can bring the throne to Suleiman before his gaze returns to him.
Before he can even blink.
Yeah, literally in the blink of an eye.
And according to the text, he actually pulls it off. Instantly, this massive throne from 2,000 kilometers away is just sitting right there in Palestine.
It's incredible.
But okay, wait, I need to stop you there and just push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
Because we are talking about an ordinary guy here. If you're racing, the jinn's offer is basically the ultimate performance vehicle, right? Like a super fast sports car. It still has to cover the physical road, just insanely fast.
Right, the linear path.
But the human essentially has a cheat code. He just completely bypasses the rules of linear space. So my question is, knowing some math or having knowledge of the book is one thing, but actually bending reality.
Yeah, it's a huge leap.
How does mere knowledge translate to the raw, universe-bending power needed to do something like that? That feels like a massive leap to me.
It is a massive leap. And that is exactly the pivotal friction point of this whole analysis.
Yeah.
How does information, because that is what knowledge is, right? How does information equate to the physical manipulation of reality? And to answer that, we have to transition away from classical mechanics entirely and start looking at general relativity.
Okay, so we're talking Einstein here.
Exactly. We have to stop conceptualizing space as this empty, rigid room that objects simply move around inside of.
Right, the old Newtonian view of the universe is just this fixed, unchanging stage.
Yeah, general relativity completely rewrites that.
Yeah.
Space and time are, well, they're fused into a single dynamic entity called space-time.
It's a fabric.
It's a fabric, yes.
Ooh.
It has a topology, it has a geometry, and under specific extreme conditions, usually involving immense gravity or staggering amounts of energy, this space-time metric can actually be warped, stretched, and folded.
Right, okay, so usually when we talk about this, people use that really tired paper folding analogy.
Oh yeah, drawing the dots on the paper.
Yeah, drawing two dots on a flat piece of paper, folding it in half, and just poking a pencil through them to create a shortcut. Honestly, that always felt a bit too, I don't know, high school science fair for me.
It's a bit rudimentary, yeah.
Especially for our listeners who already grasp the basics of relativity. So let's think about this differently. Imagine you are playing a massive, incredibly detailed open-world video game.
Okay, I like where this is going.
If you're playing normally, you have to physically run your character across the massive map to get from point A to point B. It takes time, it takes rendering power, and that is the Jins method.
Right, you are bound by the physics engine of the game itself.
Exactly. But this knowledge of the book, that is like possessing the developer console commands.
Oh, wow, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, you aren't physically running across the map anymore. You pull up the command line, edit the underlying coordinate data of the throne's asset, and just change its location to match your current coordinates.
You bypass the travel completely.
Right. You didn't move the object through the game's physical space. You edited the underlying code of the universe's engine.
That is a phenomenal way to conceptualize it.
Yeah.
Because what you are describing there is a topological shortcut. You are altering the fundamental geometry of the space between those 2 points.
And in theoretical physics, that shortcut has a name, right?
It does. It's an Einstein-Rosen bridge.
From the famous 1935 paper by Albert Einstein and Nathan Rosen.
Yes, exactly. And what's fascinating here is that the analysis we're examining draws this direct, unblinking line between that 1935 mathematical framework and a scriptural narrative that is thousands of years old.
That's wild.
It really is. Einstein and Rosen proved that, mathematically speaking, the equations of general relativity actually allow for these topological bridges, wormholes that connect two disparate points in space-time.
But let's get into the weeds of that physics for just a second, because the requirements for a wormhole are pretty staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just about finding a back door in space-time. To prop open an Einstein-Rosen bridge so that something like a giant throne could actually pass through it without the whole thing collapsing instantly, well, you theoretically need negative mass or some sort of exotic matter.
Right. You need cosmic levels of energy. We're talking the mass of a black hole.
Yeah. So, returning to my earlier skepticism, how on earth does a human with just knowledge generate the equivalent of a black hole's energy to stabilize this bridge between Palestine and Yemen?
It is the ultimate question of scale, right?
Yeah.
And this is where the interpretation becomes incredibly profound. If the universe at its most fundamental level is informational.
Like the code in the video game.
Exactly. If reality is built on a sort of cosmic code, then true knowledge of the book implies an understanding of physics so advanced that it completely bypasses the need for brute physical mass.
Wait, really? So you don't need the black hole?
Well, theoretically, it suggests that if you understand the fundamental frequencies or the deepest mathematics of reality, you can manipulate the space-time metric directly. You aren't forcing the wormhole open with raw stellar mass. You are unlocking it with the correct informational key.
So you are harmonizing with the physics engine rather than just trying to overpower it.
Precisely. You're utilizing the underlying mechanics of reality. The journey takes zero time because the throne isn't traveling through the intervening 2,000 kilometers of space at all.
It's just stepping through a doorway.
Yeah, it steps through a localized distortion where the two coordinates in space-time have been seamlessly stitched together. And it perfectly mirrors the specific phrasing of the text, right, before your gaze returns to you.
It's instantaneous.
Yes, because the physical distance was rendered mathematically irrelevant.
Man, that is just mind-bending. And what is really compelling is that this analysis doesn't just isolate the Throne of Sheba incident. It actually uses this framework as a lens to re-examine other major events in these texts.
It does, yeah.
Well,
because once you accept this premise that the manipulation of space-time might be hiding in plain sight within these narratives, it completely changes how you read everything else.
give this example.
Well, take the Mirage, the night journey of Prophet Muhammad. The text describes this monumental, multi-layered journey through the heavens and back, and all of it happens within a tiny fraction of a single night.
Right, and traditionally people read that and they just classify it as a pure, inexplicable miracle, just a total suspension of all natural laws.
Right, exactly. But viewed through this specific analytical lens, you start asking different questions. Could that journey have been facilitated by a naturally occurring or perhaps divinely manifested Einstein-Rosen bridge?
Is it a description of traversing a highly complex topological manifold?
Exactly.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The analysis brings up Surah al-Ma'arij, which literally translates to the ways of ascent or ascending paths. The text explicitly states that angels and spirits use these paths, and that they travel in a single day a distance that would normally take 50,000 years.
50,000 years of travel compressed into one day.
Think about the physics there. I mean, we are looking at extreme time dilation or the manipulation of space-time metrics. It's not just about speed. It is about altering the fundamental relationship between distance, time, and the observer.
Yeah, and this raises a really important question. Could these ascending paths actually be ancient pre-scientific descriptions of wormholes?
It makes a lot of sense when you think about the vocabulary of the time.
Exactly. Picture yourself trying to explain the concept of a stabilized wormhole, or heck, even Wi-Fi, to a Roman emperor. You simply wouldn't have the vocabulary for it.
You'd sound crazy.
You'd have to use words like invisible wind or magic doors or, ascending paths. The argument here is that the exact same linguistic limitation is occurring in these texts.
So the ancient vocabulary phrases like knowledge of the book, or before you blink, or ways of ascent, those were simply the available linguistic tools.
Right. They were describing objective physical realities that we are only just now beginning to conceptualize with modern terms like space-time fabric and Einstein-Rosen bridges.
It completely reframes the entire idea of a miracle. I mean, a miracle in this context isn't a violation of the laws of physics at all.
No, not at all.
It is a demonstration of laws of physics that are just so advanced they look like magic to the uninitiated observer. It's essentially Arthur C. Clarke's third law perfectly realized in ancient scripture.
That is a brilliant connection, yes. And the text itself seems to be acutely aware of this distinction, too. Let's look at the deliberate narrative choices made back in Surah An-Naml.
Okay.
If the author of this text was simply fabricating a fairy tale, as critics might argue, well, the easiest, most frictionless thing to do would be to attribute this impossible teleportation to the supernatural entity.
Right, just give the job to the jinn.
Exactly. Because nobody can see a jinn, nobody can measure a jinn, so nobody can question the mechanics of how a jinn actually pulls it off.
It's the ultimate narrative cop-out. It's literally a deus ex machina.
It requires absolutely zero explanation. But the text explicitly rejects that easy out. It deliberately sidelines the supernatural being with immense power, and instead, it goes way out of its way to highlight that an ordinary human performed the most spectacular feat.
And a human who is only exceptional because of the knowledge he possessed.
Exactly.
So why? Why make that specific kind of counterintuitive narrative choice?
Because it is a massive, flashing neon sign directed squarely at humanity. The argument is that by placing this immense, universe-bending power in the hands of a human armed with knowledge, the text is signaling that this isn't just a story to be passively admired.
It's an invitation.
Yes, it is an intellectual pursuit meant for us. It is telling humanity, look at what is physically possible if you relentlessly seek to understand the underlying mechanics of your reality.
It's basically saying, the universe has a source code. We just showed you someone executing a command line. Now your job is to go figure out the programming language.
That is exactly it. And this realization leads to what is probably the most critical part of this deep dive. It's this profound philosophical critique of how the modern world handles information today.
How so?
Well, the analysis identifies this deep, tragic dichotomy in how we pursue understanding. It categorizes knowledge into two buckets. Revealed knowledge, which is the insights, the narratives, and truths found in divine scripture, and acquired knowledge.
And acquired knowledge would be the empirical data, the mathematics, and observations we gain through the scientific method. Right?
Precisely.
So we have the ancient, dusty box of scrolls on one side and the sterile, guarded box of modern science on the other.
And the critique is that we have aggressively siloed these two domains. I mean, think about it. On one side of the chasm, you have brilliant scientific minds, the theoretical physicists, the Einsteins and the Rosens. They possess immense, highly refined, acquired knowledge. Through staggering intellectual rigor, they have unlocked the mathematics of the universe, like the geometry of wormholes.
But according to this framework, they often operate in a total vacuum.
Yes, they lack the revealed knowledge that might have provided the conceptual blueprints or the broader philosophical context centuries ago.
So they figured out the incredibly complex math, but they might have missed the fact that the architecture was already outlined in an ancient text that they just dismissed as a myth.
Yeah, exactly. They are building the engine from scratch without even looking at the manual that was sitting right there on the shelf.
Wow.
But the critique swings both ways, and honestly, it hits much harder on the other side.
They're religious scholars.
Right. The argument states that those who possess the revealed knowledge, the theologians, the scholars, the people who read and revere these ancient texts daily, they are utterly failing in their duty to pursue acquired knowledge.
Because they read the story of the throne of Sheba and they just nod and say, wow, what a cool miracle, and they just turn the page.
Exactly. They aren't deeply reflecting on the epistemological or physical implications of the text. They aren't stopping to ask, wait, if a human did this using knowledge, what kind of physics is actually required to fold space? How does mass interact with gravity here?
Right, they aren't asking the difficult, rigorous scientific questions that the text itself is practically begging them to ask by highlighting the human's knowledge over the jinn's magic in the first place.
Yes, they treat the text like a museum piece to be preserved behind glass, rather than an active blueprint to be reverse engineered.
That is such a tragedy, really. The great intellectual achievements of our era, exploration of quantum mechanics, astrophysics, the mechanics of reality, they're being carried out by those who use their intellect to acquire knowledge.
Right.
Meanwhile, the analysis argues that those sitting on the wealth of revealed texts have largely just stopped reflecting. They have abandoned the intellectual mandate that the text itself commands. They are just not synthesizing the data.
And that silo effect is hurting everyone's progress.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Because realistically, most of us aren't theoretical physicists at CERN, and we aren't ancient scripture scholars debating hermeneutics. Why does this specific dichotomy matter to your daily life?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally changes how we approach the entire concept of being informed. I mean, we live in an era of unprecedented information overload.
Yeah, totally. You are bombarded with data, studies, news, and hot takes constantly.
Right, and this analysis suggests that surviving that information overload isn't just about curating your feed or reading fewer things.
Yeah.
It is about how deeply you're willing to read the right things.
And how willing you are to smash different disciplines together.
Yes, it's warning us against the danger of intellectual siloing. If you only look at the world through one rigid lens, whether that is purely empirical, data-driven science, or purely literal, unquestioning religious tradition, you are going to miss the most profound truths.
Reality doesn't care about our academic departments, basically.
Exactly. Reality is holistic. You have to synthesize the theoretical, the scientific, and the historical. The failure isn't a lack of information. It's a lack of deep, integrative reflection.
It's about taking a single data point, right? Like a verse from Surah An-Naml or a 1935 physics paper on space-time topology, and just turning it over and over in your mind until you start to see the hidden connective tissue.
The analysis urges us to stop being passive consumers. Don't just accept a text as a nice story, and don't just accept a scientific equation as abstract math. Interrogate them.
Look for the friction between them.
Yes, because that friction is where the actual discoveries happen.
It is really about breaking down the artificial walls we were all taught to maintain. To realize that a mathematical model of an Einstein-Rosen bridge and an ancient story about teleporting a royal throne might actually be two different groups of people, separated by millennia, participating in the exact same conversation about the fundamental nature of reality.
And that is a massive paradigm shift in how we value ancient human history.
Yeah.
We tend to view history chronologically, right?
Yeah, assuming that because we are in the present, we are at the apex of all understanding.
And that everything in the past was primitive.
Huh.
But this framework suggests that the timeline of knowledge might not be a straight upward line at all. It might be entirely nonlinear. The insights were there. The language just hadn't caught up to the reality yet.
We have covered incredible ground today on this deep dive. I mean, we started with what looked like a simple ancient myth in the Middle East, a massive royal throne transported 2,000 kilometers from Yemen to Palestine in exactly 0 seconds.
Right.
And we pushed back on the assumptions of that story, unpacking how the brute linear force of a djinn was rendered entirely obsolete by an ordinary human who simply possessed the right knowledge of the book.
And then we translated that ancient narrative into the language of modern theoretical astrophysics, exploring how that knowledge perfectly mirrors the mechanics of space-time folding and Einstein-Rosen bridges.
We move from the narrative to the mathematical, and finally to the epistemological. The urgent, critical need to bridge this artificial gap between revealed texts and acquired scientific discovery.
It's a direct call to think bigger, to look closer, and to
So,
just stop accepting the boundaries of what you are told belongs in which box.
Absolutely.
And, it leaves us with a truly fascinating, almost haunting implication to consider.
Oh, I like the sound of that. What is it?
Well, if this specific analytical framework holds weight, if advanced physical realities like the manipulation of the space-time metric and wormholes were indeed accurately hinted at in ancient scriptures long before humanity had the calculus or the vocabulary to describe them mathematically, it begs a massive open-ended question.
Oh, absolutely it does.
What other groundbreaking scientific realities, concepts we currently think of as pure science fiction, or we haven't even begun to conceptualize yet, might currently be hiding in plain sight within ancient historical myths, religious texts, or indigenous traditions?
What other cosmic cheat codes are out there?
Exactly. What other blueprints for reality are just sitting there on the page, waiting for our modern acquired knowledge to finally catch up and recognize them for what they truly are?
Now, that is a thought that will fundamentally change how you read everything. Next time you look at a dusty ancient text, you might just find yourself searching for the source code of a wormhole. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Keep questioning the boundaries of what you know. Keep looking for those hidden connections across disciplines. And above all, keep reflecting deeply on the incredible mechanics of the universe around you. We will see you next time.